So namaste. Welcome to UNDP's special podcast series celebrating 60 years of UNDP in Nepal. My name is Kyoko Yokosuka. I'm the resident representative of UNDP Nepal, and I'm very happy and very excited to host this first episode of the series. UNDP's history in Nepal is rich, and it is a history of partnership, trust, and cooperation based on UN values that binds us with the member states. So over the last 6 decades, UNDP was involved in laying some of the foundations of Nepal's sustainable development journey. So when I first started as a UNDP resident representative last summer, I was really amazed to see the wide range of activities that UNDP Nepal was involved in over many, many years, starting from like navigation, aviation sector takeoff, and bringing electricity to hundreds of villages, reforming the governance system, and helping Nepal walk through complex political transitions. So today we are going back in time, and I'm very delighted to have two very special guests with us today who lived and shaped this history. So my first guest is Lalita Thapa, who worked in the UNDP team in earlier times and from the 70s. So she was the longest serving staff who joined as an assistant to the resident representative, but eventually retired as an assistant resident representative herself. Lalita, welcome.
Thank you. And good morning. Namaste to everybody.
Thank you. And we are also joined by Dr. Jagadish Pokharel, who, among other things, led the development of Nepal's 11th National Development Plan as the Vice Chair of the National Planning Commission, a very important partner for UNDP. He was closely involved in Nepal's decentralization and local governance program. Dr. Jagadish, great to have you here.
Kyoko, thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you. So let's start from the beginning. So UNDP has been in Nepal since 1965. And the team, led by resident representatives such as Jakob Jury, Manfred Kulesa, and John Melford, were really laying the foundation for modern development cooperation. So when you look back, what comes to mind about UNDP's footprint in those early decades? What were we trying to build in Nepal at that time?
Yeah, when I joined UNDP in early 1970s, the first resident representative I worked with was Jakob J. Jury.
Yep.
And he was from Palestine, I think. He was at that time called as, stateless.
Yeah.
But he really carries himself with such a charismatic stature. And then he has some kind of an aura. A lot of people, used to be very scared of approaching him. But I found he was always polite and very courteous. And but my association with him was very brief, only about 1 year or so. Then after that, Manfred Kulesa joined. And at that time, my understanding of UNDP's role in Nepal's development was also limited because I was working mainly for FAO.
Right.
And I switched to UNDP in mid-70s when Manfred Kulesa was the resident representative. Then after that, John Melford took over. And then, so actually you mentioned two, but I had worked with nine
rest reps.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Remembering those days, I really felt that UNDP at that time was doing, when I came to know a little bit about UNDP's programs, I used to say that, UNDP does anything and everything under the sun, starting from agriculture to, agriculture, irrigation, forestry, and nutrition, food, supply, everything. And at that time, even we had our own plane, Pilatus Porter, which used to take our staff and experts from one place to another to the project size, project equipment.
Yeah.
But very funny, this Hardy Führer, the only pilot we had at that time. And then if the passenger doesn't come on time, he used to leave them And then we used to fly plane empty. He will go and come back empty.
Okay.
And then that way he was very strict. And then people were very scared, if they don't come on time, they will be left out. So that kind of atmosphere at that time, one way.
Yeah.
But in terms of UNDP's very meaningful contribution at that time, was arranged mainly in infrastructure. And that also starting from lot of studies, feasibility studies, survey, mappings, which was required for hydropower, irrigation canals, and then roads, even containerized transport.
Yeah.
That kind of programs were there. But most important, I thought, was training institutions,
Right.
such as civil aviation training institution. Later, much later, perhaps, was a computer center.
Right.
So these were, I thought, was very important and landmark at that time.
Yeah.
And also some of the important outputs were also plans. Lot of master plans.
Yes. Okay. You did a lot of planning.
But master plans.
Okay.
5-year master plan.
Yes.
Kathmandu urban master plan. Lumbini master plan.
Right.
During the Uthant was Secretary
General was visiting.
Yeah. And then Lumbini master plan still under execution, I think, because some of the ideas are still being implemented. So that kind of master plans, feasibility reports, those are some of the outputs.
Okay. So, Dr. Jagadish, what about you? What do you think is the UNDP's work in those days?
Thank you, Kyoko. Yes, for this opportunity. I was very young graduate from MIT when I first came here. And the person I met was Paul Lundberg.
Okay.
Paul Lundberg was a CTA. We used to Chief Technical Advisor those days. And we happened to meet in my village in Tano. Okay. So he knew my brother, who was district chairman, DDC chair. And so they had this program, and he came and visited my village. And we had some function. And then while leaving, he said, would you like to join one of our projects? I said, which project? This one. So it was an PDDP. DSP is a transitional project. Okay. So, and the office was at Bakhundol here. And that's where I joined. And that's my first sort of association with UNDP.
So PDDP is Participatory District Development Program. Right? Okay, yes.
And that's how it started. And then I was there for about a year and a half, I think. And then I left, or we changed the program. And then I was appointed member of National Planning Commission. So member of National Planning Commission, I had the portfolio of local development ministry those days, and including this participatory development program, local governance, and so forth. And it so happened that I got very much engaged with this local development program that, broadly speaking, the major project from UNDP was PDDP.
Right.
Okay. And it was basically supporting the district development committees those days. Of course, now after almost 35, 40 years, when you go back and remember, you think that some of the things that PDDP did, how important was it? Because those days it was very important.
Right.
Just to give you an example, it was during my period and at UNDP, PDDP, and I was member, that we provided the first computer to Acham DDC, District Development Committee, and it was a kind of something people came to see what is it.
So the first computer.
And then of course they didn't have electricity those days. So we asked the DDC to commit a resource for diesel.
Okay.
This generator, diesel generator, as and when needed. So they wrote a letter of commitment. that if you provide us this computer, we'll be running full time, and here is the... because it was a time of euphoric time, I call it. It was euphoric in a sense, democracy, governance, openness, development. So we, young graduates from Western universities, we are coming back for this.
Yes.
So it was so amazing period there. It was very positive, hopeful period.
Things were changing.
And you can see how this energy, people's energy, local level government engagement, everything was energized. That was the environment. So this program actually started with the providing support to the district development committees, support hardware as well as software meaning the technical support, to gather data, to plan district development. That was the period when we introduced this participatory development planning guidelines at the district level that we call the 13 or 16 steps planning, right?
What I take from this part is that, UNDP was already really working on things that we still put so much emphasis today. So policy development, national planning, but also the local governance, local level planning, participatory planning, capacity development, a lot of training. Yes, the technical professional skills development. And infrastructure. You mentioned infrastructure. So we don't do those big infrastructures nowadays. That's not UNDP's role anymore. But we still engage with community level, small infrastructure and so on. So I can say that, those early projects really shape the country's long-term development. And in a sense that work still continues to this day. So changing the gear a little bit. Lalita, I want to go to you for a moment because we earlier had a chat and, you told me about the early days, our office life in UNDP. So you talked about the computer, so those days we didn't have emails, right? So we had the telex, we had typewriters and weekly diplomatic pouches. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more, how was the life of UNDP, like day-to-day kind of operation like? Just share with us some episodes.
Starting from the gate, I would say.
Yes.
At that time, UNDP has open gate, all the time open. Nobody, the guard was there.
Yeah.
But there was the doors were not closed, so anybody could come in.
Wow.
So that kind of open, and we consider ourselves very secure. So that way, it was very easy to come in and go from UNDP office. Yes, in the UNDP office atmosphere was, we only had manual typewriters. And when we have to type, if it was single paper, it's fine. But when we have to type six copies, at least 4 copies with 3 carbon papers, 6-7 copies, right? So we really have to have our fingers very strong. Even if we make one single mistake, we had to retype the whole thing again.
Nowadays, you just go back and retry.
And then later, luckily, they had this Tipex called white text.
Yes.
And you paint on it, and then you type on over it. But still, you have to correct each page, with keeping that paint.
Yeah.
So that kind of system we had. But for quick response to outside world, like telex, telex used to be there 24 hours. If we have very short messages, we can send by telex, and which is almost like coded language, So coming on, flight number, time, reach at certain time, that kind of messages.
Yeah.
That's how we used to understand. Oh, okay, so and so is coming on that day. Just send the card.
Yes.
And then came fax, which is more of a formal, because when you scan, when you fax, you can have signature also. So you can send the faxed communication with official status. So we had fax machine, but then all the letters, outgoing letters from Nepal to anywhere, to headquarters, to other line agencies, it has to be sent by pouch.
Yes.
We call it diplomatic pouch. And it
So this was like a weekly thing?
Weekly, yeah. And in Nepal, it's mostly on Fridays.
Okay, you remember?
Yeah,
it was on
Fridays. And then when Friday comes, we are really panicked because that day is like what you call it? The deadline. Everything is has to be sent by Friday.
Yes.
So it was good or bad, because good in a sense that when we go to the government, we have to say, we have to send your response by Friday. So we have to give us
very strict deadline.
They can,
Okay.
And we used to, and then even sometimes government officials also get panicked because, you have Friday, right? Now I have to finish it.
It's very interesting that they had this rhythm sent to the pouch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So first half of the week, we go to government and have meetings and work with the government and other partners. And the second half of the week will be writing, responding, and then we complete all our documentation, letters, everything to be sent by Friday.
But I'm sure that the speed in which we worked were very different, no? Because nowadays with the emails and WhatsApp and Teams and online meetings, I'm sure at that time your work was more deliberate, more kind of focused. You probably had more time with the direct engagement and discussions, and rather than us like trying to do like 100 things at the same time nowadays. Yeah. So the sense of speed was very different.
Exactly. We had only 3 trays. In trays, out trays, and pending trays. Not like now, because we have now in trays, WhatsApp, Messenger, Viber, email, and all these. And you had to jump from one in trays to another, right? Sure. But at that time, we have only 3 trays. Yeah. And if our in trays are flooded with papers, that means we are slow or we are inefficient.
So I wanted to mention some of the iconic projects that we had in the 70s and 80s. So just to name a few, we had a Thewa Lake Dam restoration in the late 1970s. We had I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Kulekani hydroelectric project. So UNDP was providing the technical assistance to this project that had a transformational effect on Nepal's power sector. We also helped establish the Civil Aviation Training Center in 1976. Early agricultural initiatives from cotton to livestock and fisheries. And you also mentioned the zoo, the central zoo. We all supported the zoo with a nutrition expert. So anything that you want to share from those times, your work or the UNDP's work in those projects, or maybe some other projects?
I want to mention 2 things on that Thewa and Kulekani. During that time, we didn't have many field activities.
Okay.
And when we had visitors from outside, like once we had congressmen from US to see projects funded by UN agencies in Nepal. And Manfred Kulesa was there at that time, and he was panicking. I said, what do I show them? What do I show them? There's nothing. Do I show them training centers or administrative staff calls? They will not be happy. From Nepal is important, but for them, they want to see something different.
Out, yeah.
So we thought, Kulekhani maybe, And Thewa Dam, because one, it is very nice place, and Pokhara. Okay. So everybody likes to go to Pokhara. So we used to take field visits to Pokhara and Kulekhani, internally as well as external visitors. So that way it was showcased as...
Okay, great. Anything for you?
This Kathmandu Valley master plan.
Yeah.
Still there. I mean...
Okay.
It's one of the pioneering documents as far as the planning is concerned. Okay, later on JICA and others also produced, but that becomes the basis.
I mean, we already talked about the local governance, but since this was really a big part of what UNDP did, and even nowadays we do under the federalism implementation project. So maybe Jagadish, you can share a little bit more. You talked about PDDP, but how do you see that UNDP's role in building the capacity, and what kind of impact do you think that these projects have really produced for Nepal?
Okay. Of course, from what I have gathered, it's working at two levels, later on 3 levels, but basically 2 levels, at the federal level and then at the local government level. Of course, at the policy making level, a close relationship with 2 ministries or the agencies in particular, National Planning Commission and Local Development Ministry those days. I think it was very critical because they were directly related to planning and resource mobilization and doing work at the local level. Okay? And UNDP worked with both of these government agencies very closely. That was for policy influence. And when it came to doing things at the local level, again, it was a time when these new leaders in the change context, in the democratic process, we used to sort of use this phrase, 3Ds. Okay.
3D.
Decentralization, democracy, and development. Okay?
Okay.
So this framework actually had a real deeper meaning, and some of the scholars have written a good book around this. So the idea was how to deepen democracy at the local level.
Yeah.
But doing it through this planning process, through development process, or through substantive works that these new leaders can demonstrate that can be done in the new system. So that was the kind of feeling there. That is where this idea of participatory development program became, very popular, and that's what everybody used to use at that level, participatory development program. In those days, there are 2 ways. One was this planning approach, how to plan, and the other was how to deliver. It had got to do with the governance. Okay, so here was this educating part of it. Most of these leaders, while doing all this participatory development at the district level, and then village level, this BDP program, broadly, social mobilization, etc. What happened was 2 kind of leaders emerged from.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Okay. One, those who were already leaders, like a district development committee chairman, etc., they could demonstrate, they could become sort of good examples.
Right.
How it can be governed. So within their political party or within their sort of peer, they emerged as something better than the common. So they became leaders, a different type of leader. And then there were other leaders, like the social mobilizers themselves.
Right.
Okay, we had hundreds of them because these they were intermediate level qualification I think they had. But the way they mobilized the local community, gradually their personality lifted, their exposure lifted. And then many of them became leaders, political as well as the business sector, and in development sector as the leaders.
Yeah, no, this is really fascinating.
And then when this PDP and other programs got integrated, like MEDEP, like RUP, they were integrated under this governance program. So it was a kind of developing leadership. It was schooling.
Yes.
All framed around this participatory development program.
Yeah. No, this is fascinating. Thank you. There are so many interesting things about what you said, but I was thinking mainly that, we still do these things. Actually, in our programs, we do the mobilization, we do the participatory process, and we do the capacity development, and we try to show some quick impacts to demonstrate the validity of the projects, and we try to, in that process, try to build the capacity. So we are still doing the same. The efforts continue. I think that's one thing. But another thing is the importance of this social mobilization, the community mobilization. And I feel really proud that, I'm the new rep here, but everywhere I go, I meet with different people, the leaders, the high level government officials, and they say, "Oh, I used to work in this, UNDP project." I meet so many of them. It's really impressive that really our interventions in early days produced the pool of leaders who are actually leading the process even outside the projects moving forward. So that's really impressive part of, I think, our legacy. I wanted to ask you, Jagadish, very quickly about the national ownership. So you also saw UNDP supporting national ownership of projects, which is still the backbone of how we work with the government today. Anything you want to share about the importance of this focus on national ownership?
One, working closely with the government. Mm-hmm. I think that is something not all agencies, development agencies actually do. So working together, yes. And then supporting. I call it undergirding rather than assisting. It's undergirding, yes. With capacity building, with technical support, whatever you do, and a little bit cajoling. Because you cannot assume everything is there. You have to say, well, here it is. How about this? Yes. Okay, so this has developed kind of two things. One, the trust between UNDP and some of these major agencies that I talked about, including Planning Commission. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think this is a very important asset, I would say. And the other thing it did is the sense that actually UNDP is supporting, but the real thing, we are doing it. Right. If we don't want, we can say no. Yes. Or we can say, let's do it differently. Things that we initiated, innovated, they are replicated. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it is they are replicated not maybe other agencies, but by the government itself. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like MEDE, for example, it is not whatever what is achieved is now national project program.
Yes.
Okay. So these are things which eventually became mainstreamed. So our alternative energy development program has this component from our EDP.
If you're to really summarize in a few words, in your view, what do you think is UNDP's most enduring contribution to Nepal?
There are a lot of impacts and then the results UNDP support has produced. But if I have to summarize in few specific areas, I would say institution building again. Institution building, and then which were very important at that time, and then establishing all these institutions, but particularly on second generation National Computer Center to National Planning Commission, under the National Planning Commission, because before that computer, I remember the Central Bureau of Statistics used to have a huge tent with the enumerators to count. Yeah. So with that kind of support, the census has become much easier. Okay. And Nepal's population census and other census have become much easier. Capacity development. Almost every project of UNDP at that time used to have provision of training, a scholarship. And at that time, Kulekhani was emerging, and then we had almost more than 50 engineers were produced through UNDP support for Kulekhani and other hydropower. And of course, policies and plans were definitely a core area of UNDP because we used to say that UNDP doesn't have much money, but UNDP can influence a lot of areas through policies. Yeah. I remember during the time of Ramsaran Mahat, who was the vice chair of the National Planning Commission at that time. By the way, Ramsaran Mahat was also with UNDP before. Okay. I worked under him also. Okay. He was vice chair of National Planning Commission. We had strengthening National Planning Commission project at that time. Through that project, a lot of planning framework and a program approach. These were introduced at that time. And then when I talk about this national ownership, that was another area I always thought that, and also close to my heart.
Sure, so sure.
We invested a lot on developing the capacities of national partners in implementing, monitoring, evaluating, planning, and a process. So then I thought this Human Development Report is another landmark, I think, where UNDP is known for.
Yes.
I think that's a big gift to any, not only Nepal, for any other countries. UNDP is working.
So the Human Development Report, of course, globally we produce it every year. Still, National Human Development Report, we still try to do every 5 years. So it's actually coming up soon, hopefully. But thank you for sharing. So you talked about institutional building, focus on capacity development, policy planning, national ownership to ensure sustainability. So those are the things. What about you?
I agree with what Lalita ji said. Just to add things, for me, this whole concept of participatory development, I think there is a very rich and impactful contribution of UNDP. And then this concept of decentralization, in whatever way people understand it, to sort of operationalize it, educate around it, and affect the whole political environment around this. I think it's a very important contribution. Of course, immediately you may not see it, but if you look at it over the years, you can see the impact. Probably that is where further innovations are required, given this information technology changes, moving from mechanical typewriter to now to the AI age. Here comes a very interesting area for us, for UNDP also, to think about how it can actually contribute this in this new context.
This is excellent. Thank you so much, Lalita and Jagadish, for sharing your fascinating stories. I've been here for over a year now, so I have heard, different pieces of stories until now, but I feel like I have, again, learned a lot of new, very fascinating things about our work in UNDP here in Nepal. And I have just two key takeaways. One is, listening to you, it was really the reminder that the real development takes time and patience and the long-term partnership. And that's what we have been doing here in the last 60 years. And another thing, listening to you was, you said, Lalita, at the beginning that, UNDP is known for doing everything under the sun. I mean, we still give that impression. People say that, right, about UNDP. But in terms of the approach and the philosophy, you talked about capacity development, institutional building, support to the planning, participatory planning, actually, and concept of decentralization, capacity building, especially at the local level, so that, the services are really, the people on the ground benefit from the development progress, right? And then benefit from the services. All those things are actually very consistent in many of the projects, in whatever areas that we do. So this is the UNDP's philosophy. And we've been really doing that. And that has been helping development process for this country. So I feel really proud to be working for this organization. And thank you so much for sharing your stories and being part of the 60 years of history in UNDP Nepal. So thank you so much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you very much.